World. My name is Dr. Sohom. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. Today, I'm going to talk about quite a serious topic, which is stalking, and it is very prevalent. So around 1 in 5 women and 1 in 10 men will experience some form of stalking in their lifetimes. Young people are the category that's most at risk. So the most common age bracket for victims is about 16 to 24-year-olds, more than any other group. And why am I talking about this? Well, stalking is something that I see regularly as a forensic psychiatrist. So I assess perpetrators who commit stalkers basically. And often they have a mental illness or a delusional belief about the victims, which is what my expertise is. So what's this video about? Well, ultimately, I'm going to give you my 5 tips to deal with a stalker. And I'm coming at it with a mindset of somebody that works on the front line with stalkers. So I know what their mindset is like, what their kind of motivations are. I'm going to talk about the psychiatric effects on victims for being stalked. And I'm going to talk about the different categories of stalker and the different motivation. On the background of all of that, I'm going to play you a clip from Steph's Packed Lunch. Rest in peace, the program no longer exists, of a good friend of mine, Isla Traquois. She and I actually went on together to talk about her experience. She tells her horrific story where she was a victim of stalking. Shout out to Isla, by the way. She's a very talented young lady. She's a friend of mine. She's a crime reporter. She's a podcaster. I will leave you links about her social media if you want to go and check out her work. Before we start, Psych for Soul guys and gals, I've got a quick question for you. Answers at the end of this episode. So the National Crime Survey in 2018 estimated the number of people in the UK that experienced stalking in about a year. So April 2016 to March 2017. Can you guess what that number is? I know it's a very easy thing to say on the internet, but it actually blew my mind when I saw the number. So I'm sure it will shock you. Find out at the end. Okay, so let's get started on the video.
Hello, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Now, my next guest has been through hell because of a stalker who lived next door to her. TV presenter Isla Traquois was terrorised to the point of panic attacks, hair loss and sleepless nights. Her stalker has been found guilty, but he's been allowed back home to the house next door to Isla's. Now, Isla is here alongside forensic psychiatrist Dr. Sohom. Thank you.
It's not quite how you pronounce my name, but close enough.
For joining us. I just can't begin to imagine what this has been like for you, Isla. Like, can you just take us to the beginning of how it started? Yeah.
Before Isla gets into her fascinating story, I just wanted to say that I'm really impressed with Isla. I think it's very brave to come on national TV and talk about this issue. It can be traumatic talking about it, rekindling all those kind of very difficult and challenging memories. It can be embarrassing, and she's been great. She's been very stoic, very emotionally robust. She's been able to kind of share her experience for the viewers. But anyway, let's hear about her story.
I bought this idyllic house in the countryside. I got the keys and I was renovating it, so I was in every day. And it began with the neighbour just being a little bit over-friendly, over-interested, but you kind of don't want to fall out with your neighbours when you're first there, and especially, if I was banging and whatnot, doing renovations. But it got to the point where I think we diminish it as women and think, oh, well, maybe they're just, but my, red flags were going off when this is not right. He was coming into my property without, telling me, and in particular, climbing over the back wall and coming in, saying, you haven't eaten yet, can I make you a sandwich? So it went.
So I would say that, just to pick up on a point that Isla made, sometimes it's easy objectively if we look at her case or somebody's case and say, obviously this person's a stalker, why did that not occur to you in the first place? But I completely agree with what Isla's saying. Sometimes there's a grey area of what is just slightly unusual, over familiar, crossing boundaries behaviour versus actual criminal stalking, and it's hard to tell at the beginning, isn't it? So you don't want to piss off your new neighbour. So I can completely understand why Isla was cautious, but she was a bit resistant to the idea that this man might become a stalker. I think that's the natural human instinct until it goes too far.
Like that, and then I tried to handle it myself. I put in screening measures, subtle things like bushes and mirrored film and blinds and trellises, and that's when, and as I withdrew of sorts, that's when he became more aggressive, and the behaviour started escalating, and that's when I had to get the police involved.
Yeah, and so
that is another massive red flag, is that when you cut off contact, if that person becomes more obsessive and more interested in you, that is a huge risk factor or indication that this is beyond somebody that's just being that's just socially awkward, and it's into the realms of a stalker.
what happened when, I'm really sorry to interrupt, I've just got some breaking news, and Nate, I'm really sorry to interrupt this interview. We are now going to be going to Channel 4 News.
That's quite all right, Steph. There's a whole story of what happened there, but I will save that for another day.
So you tried to tackle this. This guy was still hassling you all the time, and then eventually you went to the police. What happened next?
Yeah, well, I really did wait till things were really bad before I went to the police. And I thought that, once you pull that ripcord, you're going to get the help you need. You don't. The community police officers were fantastic, but unfortunately my case was mishandled at the beginning to the point where a PC was taken off my case. He told me once he spoke to the stalker, he said, but he was nice and polite and it's just a misunderstanding.
That's irrelevant, isn't it?
He told me he wouldn't be a go-between, so this is why it's crucial.
So from what Isla's describing, it sounds like the police officer was just incompetent, really. So instead of taking a complaint where a woman's fearing for her safety seriously, this police officer is taking the man at face value, and the stalker, is being quite dismissive. And it's almost like the police officer is absorbing those beliefs. So he's basically believing the perpetrator rather than the victim. I'm not a police officer, but I can't imagine that is exactly in line with their training, I think is a polite way of saying it.
Police need better training, they need to be trauma-informed, and they need to take victims seriously. People often ask me, well, what did he do? It's hard to explain because there's hundreds of behaviours. It's a pattern of obsessive fixated behaviour. It's not necessarily one instant where you're punched in the face, it's an assault. It's lots and lots of microaggressions. Yeah. And I ended up living in a prison in my house, terrified, with my blinds down all the time, with an alarm on while I was in the property, security cameras and a fence. It cost me thousands, to the point where I had to leave, and I still can't live in my home.
Because he's now, even though he's been found guilty, he's now back living in the house next door.
He's never left. He's been able to...
So I think now is a good time for me to get into the meat of the bones of what I want this episode to be about, which is my 5 top tips of how to deal with a stalker. So I'm going to tell you about immediate actions. Number 1, this is quite obvious, but report the stalking to the police. So this is a really important step, because even if you don't have concrete proof at this point, at least you're alerting your behaviour to the police, and the police can start documenting incidents. So I suppose what I'm saying is it doesn't become of interest to the police until they know about it. So if you wait too long, and Isla fully admits that she did here, then there's not going to be this time period where the police have been tracking their behaviour, even though in Isla's case it seems like the police weren't doing what they're supposed to do. My number 2 tip in terms of dealing with stalkers would be to increase your personal safety. So what do I mean by that specifically? You have to be aware of your surroundings and take special precautions, such as varying your routines or varying your routes. So not always going down the same path if you've got the choice, using well-lit paths, having a safety plan if you feel unsafe. So for example, it might be carrying one of those sort of alarms. Maybe you have somebody who lives near where you work, for example, or where you frequent, who you might need to pop in and see, or they're on high alert. So if you get a phone call because you think you're being followed, this person might be able to be ready to help you if you need that support. My number 3 tip for dealing with stalkers is documenting the stalking. So you have to keep a record of all the incidents, no matter how minor or trivial they seem. And I mean in detail. So I'm talking about dates, times, locations, details of the stalking behavior, video footage nowadays on your phone if you can. And why do you do this? Because the police will need to build up evidence to eventually help maybe get a restraining order. So if you have 10 videos showing this person's following you, even though you've asked him to leave you alone, then that's going to be a lot more. It's going to be ammunition to help you. In fact, in Isla's case, she did do this. She documented quite a lot. She showed me personally some of the videos of this really creepy, stalky next door neighbour.
I moved out.
Sorry, a couple more things. My 4th tip for dealing with a stalker, and this is a bit more controversial. Some people might disagree, or not even disagree, but they might feel that it's a bit of a big step, is to tell your wider network. Because if you tell more people, then they can be vigilant, they can kind of help, they can look out on your behalf. So for example, friends and family is an obvious one, but even like work colleagues, say, or if you're pally with the cafe that you go to all the time with the staff there. And obviously this is a balance, right? Because I fully understand that it's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? And you don't want to be sort of judged by people, so you have to use your own judgment where it's appropriate. But I suppose what I'm saying is the more eyes, the more people you have who are aware of your situation and who are on your side, the more likely they are to intervene and to kind of, challenge the stalker if he's bothering you or if he's hanging around. And that, just by them being those people in your network being hyper alert, that might hopefully be might dissuade the stalker. It might work as a deterrent. And finally, my fifth tip in terms of dealing with a stalker is more about your own mental health. So that's seeking support. So talk to friends and family, not just to tell them about the stalker, but as a cathartic way. Maybe look for therapy. Just try and get some of the emotions and the fear and everything off your chest by talking about it. So those are kind of my immediate reactions. I'll tell you about some things to avoid specifically when it comes to dealing with stalkers, but let's see more of this video first.
On while I was in the property, security cameras and offence cost me thousands, to the point where I had to leave, and I still can't live in my home.
Because he's now, even though he's been found guilty, he's now back living in the house next door.
He's never left. He's been able to stay there. I moved out more than a year ago. I barely got to live there because it got so bad. And I would try and move out for a period, go back, and the behaviour would escalate, which is quite normal, I think, for stalking cases. They don't stop, they just get worse.
And there's nothing you can do about it, so he can just carry on.
There's a restraining order for a year, but there has been two, I've reported 2 breaches of that already, which is with the police. No, and in a year's time, he's allowed to apparently stalk me again, unless he does something really bad, which I would have to then put myself back at the home in a position of risk. So there's really no protection for victims. And unfortunately, we're the ones who are left to play hide and seek for the rest of our lives. We're the ones who have to change our behaviours, move. I mean, I'm couch surfing at the moment. I don't have a home to live in, and I've got this gorgeous home sitting empty in the countryside.
Yeah, so Isla picked up on a really important point, and it's a tragic truth, you know, and that is that the victims are the ones that suffer. The victims are the ones that are inconvenienced. Often it's their life that turns upside down. Isla made another point, which is that, you know, there's a restraining order. The police did what they're supposed to do eventually to a degree, but it didn't work. The guy just breached the restraining order, and the police, it seems, didn't really do anything to process that. And I suppose that must be really frustrating if you're a victim. And the other thing she said is that it's almost as if the situation, the network, the strategy is set up so that the stalker has to do something dangerous before the whole situation is taken seriously. And unfortunately, I agree with that. So it's easier to sort it out with the police if they've committed an overtly threatening or violent act. But the problem is those things that don't quite reach that threshold, but are still very intimidating, still very worrying. The police don't seem to take that as seriously. So it's just kind of, there's a grey area which is a lot more difficult to deal with, I think.
How do you feel?
I mean, I'm traumatised after what I've gone through, and going through court, being gaslit in court, that's another thing. It is entirely on victims of stalking to gather evidence and present it. And of course, I then got accused of stalking him. This is a common, it's called DARVO, deny attack, reverse victim offender, and that's precisely what happened to me. I'm articulate, I'm assertive, I'm a crime journalist. I didn't know anything about stalking though, to be honest. And I wasn't a good victim, you know? So you do get treated differently by the police, and you get treated differently in the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
So again, Isla picks up on a very good point, which is like the psychiatric effects of stalking. So as well as the obvious things like more anxiety, more depression, possibly post-traumatic stress disorder, you can actually have things that are not related to mental illness, but are just, it can be like, it can be exacerbations of natural personality traits. So people who go through these experiences can be quite paranoid, they can be sensitive, they can be hypervigilant, so they can be always on edge, never fully able to be relaxed or comfortable. And remember, we're talking about victims here, so it's not even their fault, but they seem to suffer. They could be quite distrusting of strangers, because they might think that this new person might be somehow connected to the stalker, or this new person might be a stalker themselves. So it puts you on a heightened sense of alert all the time. Anxiety is what I'm talking about.
Dr. Das, I just want to bring you in on this because...
Oh, hello. I wasn't listening, I don't think. I was just relaxing too much.
This is not uncommon, isn't it? Stalking is a problem. Why do people stalk people?
That's a good question, Steph. I think you can group stalkers into about 5 categories, and they all have different motivations. So there is the rejected stalker, the resentful stalker, intimacy seeker, incompetent suitor, and predator, which is probably the most dangerous. So a rejected stalker is somebody who's previously been in a relationship with the victim, and their primary motivation is to reconcile that relationship. And sometimes when that fails, they continue their activities because it's the only way that they can feel close to the actual victim. And then there's the resentful stalker, which I think would be the category that the perpetrator in Isla's case would fall into. So that's somebody who sees themselves as a victim. And that can be related to paranoia or mental illness, but their actions are about trying to get revenge on the victim. And then when we look at the intimacy seeker, it's somebody who believes that they should or they are already in a relationship, and sometimes that's related to delusional beliefs. So you get people who stalk high-profile celebrities, etc. And then moving on to the incompetent suitor, that's usually somebody that doesn't necessarily have a mental illness, but they have some kind of learning disability, so they can't understand that their behaviour is inappropriate or creepy. So in their minds, they're making romantic gestures. And I think to a degree that might describe Isla's stalker for some of his behaviour at least. And then finally, the most dangerous category, in my opinion, would be the predatory stalker. So that's somebody who who gets pleasure from dominating and intimidating their victim, and there's usually some sexually deviant practice and ideas there.
Yeah, because
Geez, that guy goes on a bit, doesn't he? Okay, so I just wanted to expand the screen and tell you about what you shouldn't do. So I've told you about what you should do, what you should avoid doing if you're being bothered by a stalker. Number one, the most important thing is do not engage with that person. Don't respond to their calls, their messages, their texts, their attempts to contact you. And I know it must be very tempting if you're being victimized, if you feel like you're being pushed around and bullied and intimidated, to answer back, to stand up for yourself. It's natural human instinct. But I think it can actually worsen the situation, especially if the stalker's got like a mental illness. If they're delusional, then they might misinterpret any kind of connection that you give them, even hostile tones, into somehow being a message or a connection. So what I'm saying is even negative reinforcement might be interpreted by them as some sort of encouragement. Just going off on a tangent, this kind of reminds me of a video that I've done recently about how you deal with narcissists. And it's not the same, but the one thing that kind of struck me is that with narcissists, you can't argue with them. You can't have the last word because they're not interested in a logical argument or debate. So there's no point trying to get the last word, no matter how tempting it is. And I think it's similar in stalking. Go check that video out, by the way. It's somewhere on my channel. Always be plugging. The number two thing you should never do if you're being stalked is to go to places alone. So try and go places with somebody you trust, especially when you're in public places. And if you can't do that, then just minimize the risk. So for example, instead of taking the bus home from the tube station, get a taxi if you can. Number three thing that you shouldn't do when you're being stalked is share too much personal information online. So be mindful of what you're saying on social media and online platforms. Because remember, some stalkers take this seriously. They work quite assiduously. They might spend hours researching your routines to follow you. So for example, if you're posting about going to the same coffee shop every week and you're taking pictures of your hazelnut skinny frappuccino, then they might figure out that you're going to be there at a certain time. Or if you're excited about seeing a concert and you tell people on Instagram and show a picture of your ticket, they might be there. So you just got to be quite clever about what you're revealing and also your privacy settings on your social media.
the guy who was stalking you, he was in your garden naked and things like that.
Yes, yeah, he was he was in his garden, but he was putting a collapsed clothes horse at a particular point where he can climb over into my property. And we cannot. I showed it actually to Dr. Das before. I'm like, why would you be doing that? There's a whirly in the garden. The only thing I could think of is he was planning on climbing over. We don't know, and that's the problem. You don't know what stalkers are capable of. It is, as Laura Richards, who's an expert in it, and she's been.
I think that's a really good point, isn't it? Because, I mean, I'm trying to think of how to word this. All stalking behaviour absolutely is unacceptable, without a question. But you don't know how dangerous any individual stalker is going to be. So is this, I was talking about different categories, wasn't I, on Stess Pack Lunch? Is this an incompetent suitor who doesn't mean to physically hurt you, who's, you know, who might cause you a bit of distress, but he's not actually a physical threat to your safety, versus somebody who is like a predator who could actually literally really severely injure you or kill you? It's really hard to tell the difference, isn't it? You don't know. They're unpredictable by their very nature, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Heading law reform. She calls it murder in slow motion. It's the crime most likely to result in murder, rape, or serious harm, and it happens in a very insidious, drip way. And it is a crime where there could be intervention if there was psychiatric intervention at an earlier stage, and there's just not.
Yeah, because it feels like the onus is on the victim to try and sort this, doctor, doesn't it? Like, what should you do if you are the person who's being stalked? How do you deal with it?
Are you kidding me, Steph? I literally just said that in this video, but here you go.
It does seem really unfair that just like in Isla's case, the victim is the one that has all the inconveniences and has to move away. But to answer your question, there are a few things that you can do if you're a victim of stalking. So one thing would be, if you feel comfortable, to tell as many people as possible in your life, you know, family members, friends, people that you work with. So if the stalker tries to follow you in different scenarios, that there's more people that can protect you and defend you. Another thing would be to harass the police, I think, because as we've seen, sometimes the threshold for your case to be taken seriously is actually quite high. So it's about collating evidence and calling the police repeatedly. And in terms of other safety advice, I would say be very careful about the information that you put out about yourself. So you don't want, for example, your address to be on the internet.
Yeah. What do you want to see change then, Isla?
I want there to be better police training for a start, and I think that they have to really take stalking seriously. The conviction rates are so low. They're 0.5 or 0.1%.
See, I agree in theory with what Isla's saying. We do need better police training, especially when you look back at her experience of what that police officer, how he treated her. But I'm not trying to be like difficult, but I also wonder whether it's so entrenched in some areas of the police, the culture's so rotten, that will extra training help? I suppose another way of saying that is that take that police officer, for example, the one that wasn't really listening to her and wasn't really taking her concern seriously and sort of sided with the stalker. Is an hour's or 2 hours or 10 hours training going to change that? Because that's an attitude. That's deep-rooted misogyny. So I suppose I'm being a bit skeptical here, but I would like to think that training would make a difference, but I'm not convinced.
And that's of the cases that go to court. Very few go to court. I'm one of the lucky ones, you know.
It doesn't sound like you're
No, I know, because
great.
I'm the one that's got he's back,
Yeah.
you know, as you say, well, he never left us home. I want there to be a different approach, as I say. I want there to be psychological help. The probation report for my stalker, I hate calling him my stalker, the stalker, it said that he didn't accept he'd committed a crime and had a distorted view of me, and he's still free. Community service is not going to change his behaviour. I can never live there again.
Yeah.
So the whole thing needs to be re-looked at and how they tackle it. I don't think putting them to jail is necessarily the answer, though. For some of them, it has to be. Those are the predators who are intent on violence and don't care what, you know. I think that the best way to tackle it is doing some sort of form of therapy, so they understand they're doing something wrong and they can't keep doing it.
Yeah.
Restraining.
So yeah, a very good point that she makes is that obviously, you know, if somebody's committing a violent crime and is a danger, a risk acutely to the members of the public, obviously they should be in prison. There's no question about that. But if you've got a resentful stalker, it could actually make the problem worse. If they've got psychological issues and they feel that they're being even more victimized and even more wronged, there's a risk that after coming out of prison, it could be even worse. So it's a very difficult, it's a minefield, isn't it?
Murders, SPOs, they don't make much difference for most of them.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for coming in to talk about it, Isla, and good luck as well with everything. And thanks, Doctor, as well. I should say we approached Wiltshire Police about Isla's case, and they said, we take all reports of stalking and harassment incredibly seriously and would always encourage victims to come forward. Our officers understand the impact that these types of offences have on victims, and we work hard to provide the relevant training and education so they know the most appropriate way to handle these sorts of investigations. We've also contacted the government.
I mean, I don't want to just shit on the police here, but those are just words, aren't they? What's the point of saying something as poetic as that if the police officers at the front line are not taking Isla seriously? I find it a bit insulting, frankly.
About the way stalking cases are handled and what needs to change. A spokesperson said stalking can be extremely distressing for victims, which is why we have tripled our funding to the National Helpline, introduced stalking protection orders and doubled the maximum sentence from 5 to 10 years. While sentencing is a matter for independent judges, prison terms for those convicted of stalking have almost tripled in the last decade. Now, if you have been affected by anything we've been talking about there, then you can visit our support pages. Head to channel4.com/support. And again, thank you so much for coming in to talk about this to me.
Yeah, and just to add to that, my Psych for Sore guys and gals, if any of you have issues with stalking or you're worried, there's the National Stalking Helpline. The number is 0808 802 0300 for the UK. I'll put that in the link below. Before I finish, I asked you at the beginning of this video, the National Crime Survey 2018 estimated a number of people in UK that experienced stalking between April 2016, March 2017. Let me hear your answer. This is going to shock you. 21 million people in the UK experience some form of stalking. That's just crazy. Anyway, I'm about to finish. I implore you to subscribe to this channel. Not only does it help me out immeasurably, but it also will get rid of that nasty plaque. We all know what your problem is. You think I didn't know, but I know. Hope you enjoy the rest of my videos. I make a smorgasbord of videos related to mental illness, violence, crime like this, giving my top tips, etc., etc. My intention of these videos is to educate you so you can think like a forensic psychiatrist, and also to take over the world. It's not going great. I've done recent videos about Dr. Dre, Busta Rhymes, Jada Pinkett Smith, Lucy Letby, etc., etc. Go chickadee check them out. Until next time, have a blessed day.